So I want to review and talk about the episode "Tist," which is the episode of South Park where Eric Cartman is so out of control that his mom decides to call Nanny 911 and Super Nanny, and then eventually Caesar Ramon, if I'm saying his name right. He is a he controls animals, so he treats Cartman like an animal, like just like pinches him on the neck and makes Cartman kind of submissive. So I really want to talk a little bit more about the psychological aspects of this because I think that this is possibly the most psychological episode of South Park, and it really shows the psychology of Eric Cartman and Leanne Cartman very, very well. That when Caesar comes, what happens is that he starts to ignore Cartman, and then Cartman gets kind of angry, and that's kind of something that we see with and people have dissected Cartman as a narcissistic sociopath. So he's automatically doing the thing that that he needs to do, which is he ignores Cartman because he wants to show dominance, and he also wants to kind of show that he is not to be messed with. And I also think that if Caesar was smart, what usually they do with those behavioral shows, they show like the person who's about to walk in to the situation and handle it. They kind of show them clips, so he probably saw what he did to one of the nannies, which was psychologically scar them so bad that they're in an asylum eating their own feces, and the other one where that person walked out. So he kind of knows that you can't reason with Cartman because he's going to get in your head. And then also, like, when you look at that episode where the character where everybody acts like Cartman is dead, um, because Cartman eats all the fried chicken skins. When Cartman gets ignored, sometimes that's the only way he actually changes. So it's kind of like So I think that that's kind of the thing that he learned, that you can't reason with an asshole, and if somebody's showing power manipulative behavior, you can't listen to what they're saying. You have to kind of you can't they're Medusa through their words. You can't listen to their words. So I think that that's the first aspect, that the way to kind of tear down a narcissist, especially somebody like Cartman who is a narcissist but he doesn't really have that much power because he's still a kid, is really just to not give him what he wants, which is attention. He is somebody who craves attention because his mother is not his mother's not there for him outside of physical needs, outside of clothes and spoiling him, but not the emotional, not the emotional love. You get from discipline, you get from you really just kind of get from like discipline and reasoning and other things like that. But that's one side of it, and then the other side of it is that Caesar's method wasn't really good because Cartman's still not a dog, but it's hard because he doesn't like follow through, and I think that's why Cartman reverts, because the thing that happens to Cartman is that yes, he does change. He starts to act like all the other kids in South Park. He's more like a mix of Kyle and Clyde at the end. Nice hair, nice clothes. Being able to be independent and care about his education. And also, Cartman is a genius, so he changes to like the best version of himself. But I do think that what also happens in Cartman is that because he realizes it in his own psychology that he has two choices. He has a choice to kill his mother and be like, what, you're dominating me, and I just don't like those changes, because he's afraid of change. I just kind of think that I kind of just really, really think that what would have happened if Caesar was still there, or Caesar slept with Miss Cartman. He would have killed them both, because he probably would have been so overwhelmed with anger and his fear of change being challenged, but also his other emotion of what, I just I don't want to be dominated. So I think that unfortunately, if Caesar's decided to be Carmen's father, Carmen would have not changed. He would have killed them both and made a chili out of them. But I think that what I hope would have happened is that, if Caesar stayed and Cartman was starting to change a bit, there would be a point where he kind of talks to Cartman, and they both talk to Cartman. They're like, okay, well, Cartman, um, you know what? This is what your future going to look like. You're going to be, homeless on the road in the middle of a snowstorm, like we saw in one of the future episodes, or you're going to be like a fat plumber, like we saw in other episodes, because you know what? You have to learn that there's consequences for your actions, and you also have to learn that the world doesn't revolve around you, and you also kind of have to learn that because you have an anger issue and you take things to extremes, you're going to keep running into this pattern of building yourself up and losing everything that you built up. Or sometimes things work out for you and things revert because you're not consistently stable. But then, once, Cartman has understands like how to reason after he's been disciplined, then hopefully he will change. But I think that another thing you see in this episode is Leanne Cartman. Like, her biggest problem is that I think she wants a man in her life, and I think, like, maybe if you look at her childhood, if she was like Cartman, maybe that's kind of what made her. Let's say if she was like Cartman, I think, like, maybe the way, because she's so like giving into Cartman's needs, that maybe like her father was like Caesar in a sense, that like, she was out of control. Maybe she was raised by her mother. She was out of control. Her mother married a man that kind of controlled her, and then now she has a son that controls her. She still kind of like can hold a job. She's more responsible than she was in the earlier episodes. Even though she does have patterns of being a slut, but I think that, the other thing about Leanne is that I think that she has to kind of understand too that the way to find a man is to control her son, because, who wants to kind of marry into chaos? And I also think that the ending kind of says it really best, that she can't really find a man, so she kind of spoils her son a lot, because, the getting him 2 Mega Rangers instead of 1, taking him to KFC, all that is reverting Cartman, because then he's kind of learning that his mother wants love, and spoiling him is her way of feeling that love again. And we'll talk about, like, the psychosexual a little bit. Like, obviously Leanne gets screwed over by her son, so she's technically being mentally fucked by her son. Also, giving into hit Cartman's demands, or letting Cartman do what he wants. That's a way of being dominated. I'm sorry, like, I live in my brother's apartment. He has like a mouse problem, so I'm kind of just figuring out what that noise is, But yeah, I just think that really, really, that he that Cartman is somebody that that really kind of struggle, that really just gets what he wants because his mother has voids, and that's kind of the biggest problem with Cartman. And I think what Cartman has to understand is that even though his mother has problems, he's also a big part of the problem as well. If he behaved better, if he was not such a repellent personality, then maybe his family would be more successful. Maybe people would be like, you know what, I just don't want to marry Leanne just to marry Leanne. I just want to also give this kid a better life, because there's some men that do that, or women who who hook up with women, or other gender hooking up with other gender, because they like, you know what, I come from resources and I can make this kid's life better, as well as finding a partner that's right for me. So I think that that's what it means to me. I think that this is also a clear example of what happens if Cartman has a father. And ultimately, I think that he wants a father really badly. And I think that if Caesar stayed and married Leanne Cartman, and learned to reason with Cartman, then Cartman would be more like, he'd be more like, Kyle and, Kyle and Butters with balls. He would not be this kid anymore. So, I think it's a very unfortunate episode, because now we kind of understand why Cartman is so tragic, because he gets in his own way a lot, and that's his own fault, and he's done horrible things, and that's his own fault. But also, he he's set up for failure because he has a very toxic mentality. And I think that's important for all of us, that sometimes there are certain things that we need to make our lives a lot better, and sometimes that may be a relationship that could be motivating and inspiring, but those things can't happen unless you change yourself for the better. And then also too, that sometimes when we think that, or sometimes when we're raised in environments, and I've been raised in this environment too, where I've had a dominant parental figure, so it's harder for some people like me to kind of have self-control, or want to have self-control, because I was always kind of raised that whatever my decisions were very undermining or stupid, but my parents' decisions were always right and whatever. So sometimes when, I may say, well, what if I married a girl that kind of planned out my life, was kind of like my manager, kind of had expectations, like would I be more successful than I am now as a filmmaker? Or should I tell myself that, well, whatever I'm missing, I should develop in my personality, the self-discipline and the high expectations, and undermining the bad choices. Should I develop that within myself, or should I wait until the right person comes along, which may or may never happen? And obviously, if you look at the story of Eric Cartman and where he is in the future, being homeless, as and drunken in the snow, that doesn't happen. He doesn't get the dad that's going to save everybody. That's going to save him and make him better. So I just think that this episode is really good at showing the psychology, but also the ultimate like demise of Eric Hartman, because he doesn't come from a strong parental figure. But ultimately, the other thing is too is that importantly, it is his own fault. If he's causing all this chaos and misery, karma is a bitch. And also too that if you always do bad things to people and you rely on it, and that's how you make your money, that's how you make your friends, that's how you build your life. You end up dealing with the end results of that. You lose friends, you lose family. People just know your game, and then they're just gonna like watch you suffer because you deserve to suffer. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.